The longest minute ever.
I know it always
It's
is.
pinned, look at that.
Hey,
Right?
you can see the time.
That is nice.
That is
I brought that back too.
okay.
I think it's from what they were doing yesterday.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed, and you can join us by going online to our website or to tctvonline.com and click on live broadcasts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute your phones. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Public comment. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to the public comments email on our website. Public comments received by 12 on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email public comments by 12 p.m. on Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners office at 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon, 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Debbie, do we have anyone signed up in the room or online for public comment?
No, neither.
All right, thank you. Well, we will welcome everyone to our meeting and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Olson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, we can jump right in with presentations and welcome Kate Skinner, our district forester, with us this morning to give us a presentation. Good morning.
Good morning. Get myself set up here. Thank you.
Just
All right.
not quite. Just 1 second.
All right. Well, I can start in. Good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Kate Skinner, Tillamook District Forester for the Department of Forestry. I've been with the agency for almost 28 years as district forester since 2014. So I'm here today to give a bit of a reintroduction to the Oregon Department of Forestry, which might sound a bit odd to several folks. And in our conversations with Commissioner Scar over the last year, we've talked about the Department of Forestry has gone through a lot of changes internally with our program delivery and what we're working on as our priorities. And so our goal is to kind of provide a series of discussions to talk about what the Department of Forestry is doing, also utilizing Jane Scott Video Productions to help us get that message out to the community about the work we are doing and the work we aren't doing with some of the assumptions. So as I said, we're going to cover several topics today, but we intend to come back, I think, 3 or 4 times over the next year to really talk about in depth on several items. All right. Debbie has empowered me, so let's see if this works.
Here,
Okay. All right.
I'll get you started.
Thank you. All right. So I want to specifically today talk about the work that Tillamook District is doing in the community and for Oregonians. But I want to start a little bit higher level and talk about the Department of Forestry in general, what we do. So we implement 3 divisions, and the highest in priority, as well as what we're known for, is fire protection. So as an emergency response agency, we protect and respond to fires in 16 million acres of public and private ownership. We have 3 incident management teams that are all hazard. So for example, we had a team recently dispatched to the Springfield area to respond to the ice storm recovery in that area. with our fuels reduction crews as well as our command and general staff. And our work in the fire is not only around fire response, but also prevention, initial attack, and extended attack management. The second program is Forest Resources. It's been many names over the years, but it's really the implementation and enforcement of the Forest Practices Act. So our in Oregon, Forest Practices Act was first adopted in 1971, and it was the first forest practices rules in the nation. So the Forest Practices Act has continuously been modified over the life of that plan, but in the last 5 years has probably been the most significant changes, with the number of changes and the breadth of those. And we'll come back and talk about those a little later. So state forest, I think we're best known for here in Tillamook County. We own about 700,000 acres across the state, both east side and west side, and that includes the management of roads, harvest, recreational opportunities, and of course reforestation, young stand management. We also have other programs. Forest Resources has another arm that we call All Lands. It's grants and incentives for small woodland owners, federal grants that are passed through, and then also federal forest restoration, Good Neighbor Authority, and also our forest health and research all happens under those pieces. We also have an urban and community forestry program, and I think in my time with the department we had one person that worked with a lot of communities across the state, but that has increased with a lot more interest and some funds that have come available. So that program has actually grown a little bit over the last few years. All right.
Oops, sorry. I was trying to help you and I didn't.
One more.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so the district programs done here out of Tillamook we talked about fire protection. So the Northwest Oregon Fire Protection Association is Tillamook District, Forest Grove District, and Astoria. So as you can see on the slide, the original Fire Protection Association was formed in 1912 for Northwest Oregon, and the state assumed management of that in 1945. So we actually have a board that we respond to, made up of landowners, and that we report to and work with them directly on how we manage for fire protection. And so the three districts make up 1.7 million acres of protection. 522,000 of that is out of Tillamook District. And it's a large geographic area, and a big portion of this work too is prevention. And so prevention activities of education, we do harvest operation inspections for fire equipment, regulation in the summer based on fire season conditions. And prevention is also part of the yard debris vouchers that are supplied by Title III funds, and this last year Keep Oregon Green as well. We work with multiple districts and agencies for what we like to call the complete and coordinated system. So the rural fire districts, the state fire marshals, emergency management, federal agencies, and of course our landowners, who also pay 50% of the portion of our budget for the local protection here. And then this is also the forest land classification process, which we'll be coming back to work with the county commissioners on setting up a board for that and a process of that. It was forest land classification process was last completed for us in 2020, and so we're hitting the window of a 5-year update, and so we'll be coming back to talk more about that. All right, next slide, Debbie. So the Tillamook District also has Forest Resources, of course, the Forest Practices Act, and of course regulated by our stewardship foresters. And as I said earlier, it's gone through significant changes, and most recently is through legislative acts and through the Private Forest Accord. So for example, the notifications for aerial spray have changed, when you need to do those notifications, and a lot more regulations around homes and schools. And then also the other big change is steep slope protections and stream protection for buffers. And we have 2 stewardship foresters on our district, and the process is really around a landowner wants to do a forest operation, and they provide us with a notification of that operation, and that is just the beginning point of our stewardship foresters working with those landowners for harvest of trees, chemical application, review of resource sites, and being on the ground. So our stewardship foresters are really the boots on the ground working with our landowners. So I'd say with all the changes this last year, we have really spent a lot of time training our employees, but also working with our landowners and trying to learn all of us together the new rules that have rolled out. And January 1st was a significant change of rules, and so we're still learning. And we have to remind ourselves we've only been implementing these new rules for about a month and a half, and so some things work well and some things we're still trying to figure out how to put it on the ground. The stewardship foresters also often work with community planning with the county for if there's a land use change. They also work with DEQ, water sampling, and those kind of pieces of it to make sure that we're all working together across agencies. So for Tillamook District, there's about 270,000 acres of private ownership in the county, and there's so Weyerhaeuser, Stimson, Nuveen, a variety of land ownership here, and small landowners as well. All right, next slide then. Thank you. So the largest program and well-known here in Tillamook County, of course, is the State Forest Program. Tillamook State Forest is about 365,000 acres, and I always say that folks talk about Tillamook District, Tillamook County, and Tillamook State Forest as one and the same. However, there's a lot of nuances around that. Forest Grove manages the east side of the Tillamook State Forest. We also have ownership in Clatsop County, Yamhill County, and Washington County. And then we also manage acreage for the Department of State Lands under an agreement in the Interstate Forest. So as all of you know, we have a long history here from the Tillamook burn to the establishment of the state forest. So in these pictures in this slide here, you can see this is the same place, looking up the North Fork of the Kilchis River in 1960, and then again in 2012 is the photo below. And then the photo below too, while it's much greener, it's also, you can start to see the yellowing of the trees in that photo, which is also the Swiss needle cast that is on the forest. And so when I think about careers in the state forest in Tillamook, I would say there's folks that had their career based around the reforestation of the Tillamook and burn. And then my career, my generation has probably been the focus of addressing Swiss needle cast and on our overstock stands. And so while we can look at those pictures and see great progress, we also know that it came with some challenges. A lot of steep slopes are managed here, and so we continue to improve the forest and replant with mixed species stands. And the Tillamook and Clatsop State Forest in 2023 celebrated the 50-year celebration of the Forest Center. Governor Tom McCall had dedicated in 1973 up at Smith Homestead area, originally for the Tillamook State Forest. So it's quite a celebration up there. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about our organization, how we do all this. So our fire staffing, we have 3 permanent staff on district and 8 seasonal firefighters and a dispatcher that we hire. That is the smallest firefighting staff in the state of Oregon. And when I say that, the good news is, right, we don't have a lot of fire response, and so we can stay at that staffing. But we do have, as I talked earlier, we have the association we work with. And so there's resources in the Clatsop as well as over in the Forest Grove district that we draw from very often. They have bigger staffs. We also have the opportunity to draw from statewide resources, but all of our employees, this is the highest priority response. And so even our state forest employees are responding to fire calls when needed. And then uniquely in Northwest as well, we have the South Fork adults in custody crews that assist us in fire. At this time right now, I think we have 17 crews up there, 10-person crews that are available to us. And so that's in our back pocket. We don't use contract crews as much as they do in the rest of the state, but we do have this opportunity to utilize South Fork crews. Our forest resources, we have 3 permanent staff. Our stewardship foresters, they assist large and small landowners. I'd say that we've doubled our staff. We had 1.5, we had a shared employee back and forth with Astoria District, but we now have 2 full-time stewardship foresters, and we utilize our education, engineering, and enforcement to implement the Forest Practices Act there. And then, of course, our largest staff is the state forest, and so we have 22 permanent staff. We hire some seasonal employees as needed. But we also have, at our district, is recreation staff. They're managed out of the Northwest area office, but they work out of our Tillamook office here. And then in addition, is the Tillamook Forest Center, of course, at Highway 6, which provides multiple programs for students and adults and the center itself. So that's kind of what our staffing organization looks like. Like I said, we hire some seasonals once in a while to as work is needed. Right now we're focused on planting season, so that's been our big emphasis of everybody, is to help us get through that. And so the state forest, while we have a large staff, state forest and small staff of firefighters, like I said, we move back and forth, and we all have multiple responsibilities across the district. All right, so moving forward, I wanted to say, like I started with, is we would like to come back to you and talk in depth in March around the Forest Practices Act modifications and implementation. Talk about the Private Forest Accord and what that has meant to us in trying to implement those on the ground. In May, we'd like to come back for Fire Prevention Month, outlook of the 2024 fire season, and also kick off the forest land classification update process. And then June or September, depending on how schedules and fire season is looking, we're going to talk a little more around state forest, our fiscal year 25 annual operations plans, and also have a field tour time with the commissioners to talk about our operations in state forest. And then in October and November, we do a follow-up on the 2024 fire season and talk about our fiscal year 24 accomplishments for all of our programs. With that, I will close, and if you have any questions or any follow-up.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a beautiful picture.
Thanks.
Really nice. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for coming in person, and thanks for signing up to join us 4 times this year. It's educational for us, but also for the community. So I think this is great. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad to learn more. I generally knew about the three classifications or 3 arms of the Department of Forestry, but I didn't know in this detail, so thank you. This is already working for me.
Okay.
So thank you for your work, but also thank you for being here and helping us learn about what you do.
All right. Thank you very much for your time today.
Commissioners, anything else for Kate?
Sure, I would just also like to thank you for being here, Kate. I know with the pandemic, everything sort of just changed, and the dialogue that I think was typically happening through ODF and Tillamook County's commissioners, just, everybody was running crazy doing other things, and we weren't seeing you in person. So it's a delight to have you in person, and I look forward to our 4 conversations over this coming year so we can really just kind of dig in. And I also learned things this morning. I did not, the Fire Protection Association and how that fit with ODF was not something that I had any clue about. I just thought ODF was doing the firework, and I didn't know how that partnership happened with local landowners and other agencies. So I think that's really just a helpful piece, because I know that we always say, in terms of fighting fires, there's no one that we would rather have do it with us than, right, the Department of Forestry. We really appreciate that. But to really recognize and understand the full breadth of partners was new for me, and actually just kind of a reassuring, I guess, if you will, as we say, 3 staff on your district to do that. But I also recognize and have experienced when there is a fire going on, working with ODF on something else, and they're like, we're really sorry, but everybody's on the fire. We'll get back to you when it's under control and we're ready to step away. So I have experienced that shifting of staff that you do to be efficient and effective and make sure that you have the people you need. So I think the other piece I wanted to comment on quickly was just around the state forest, because I do sit on the State Forest Trust of Oregon, which is a partner nonprofit to the state forest arm of the recreation, education, and interpretation piece of the state forest arm. And it is a fundraising body. It is, in fact, the fundraising body that raised the money to build the Forest Center, I'm sure in partnership with a lot of other folks. But that was a huge project of the State Forest Trust of Oregon. And we are continuing to be active, continuing to build the fundraising capacity, because recreation, education, and interpretation are important aspects of what happens on our state forests, but they are ones where the funding is harder to come by, because that funding really is focused on the operational pieces that you need to have. So as we look at improvements to campgrounds and trails and those sorts of things, State Forest Trust of Oregon is fundraising and making more of that available. So yeah, I think, again, I appreciate you being here. I look forward to talking about the Private Forest Accord and how that implementation is going. I was at the Working Lands and Waters, Tillamook Working Lands and Waters Committee yesterday, and we talked a little bit about it. The tour that we're hoping to put together this spring for legislators and others will look at some of the impacts of the Private Forest Accord, looking at where a new culvert has been installed by one of our industrial partners and how it's different, what those rules have brought into being and what it looks like on an actual working forest right now, as well as scheduling a couple of visits to different forestry cuts at different times to look at what the old buffers look like for steep slopes and streams, and how that has changed under the Private Forest Accord and what that looks like today. So just trying to really help people, and in this case legislators who pass the legislation will be our focus, but to be able to see and almost see and touch, what's the difference? What has this work led to, and how has it changed how we're managing in our forests? So I'm looking forward to learning more about it from you, so that I will just be better equipped as I work forward in that space. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your work on the Forest Trust as well. And the private forest changes, every day I go into work, I feel like it's like the study hall. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on and looking at all our little booklets and what are the scenarios of change. Yeah. So, all right.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I have a couple of questions, and I don't think you and I have visited at any length formally, but I'm glad to see you here. And I did grow up in Oregon. I'm a native Oregonian, and I grew up in Hood River, where it was fruit trees and logs and mills, and there are fewer mills than there were back then, for sure. But I've heard it said around Oregon that happiness is a double-loaded log truck rolling down the street, and I know we still have some of that. So let me ask just a couple of questions, partly for my own interest, and also maybe those who are watching. I've heard criticisms that the Tillamook forest and maybe state forests in general, or those that have been harvested regularly, are coming back with a single or maybe only 2 species like Douglas fir and hemlock, and that biologically that's not diverse enough and we put ourselves at risk. Could you speak to that in a paragraph or two?
Yes. So part of the reason we've had the Swiss needlecast is we did such a successful job at reforesting burn with one species. And so it just created an opportunity for needlecast to really take off. And so as we reforest, we've been working a lot with Swiss Needlecast Cooperative as a highlight of, as you're closer to the coast, there's a hemlock, cedar, spruce components that go into our stands are hemlock dominated. And then as we go further east, it'll become more of a Doug fir dominated, but they all are mixed species stands now. And we try to do at least 3 species at times, 4 if possible, and some of the cedar and mixing that in as well. I would say one of the challenges we've had is really finding spruce. I think most folks know if you plant spruce, we have tip weevil with a lot of damage in it. And so that's been quite a challenge to find methods, honestly, to reforest. It grows really well underneath of alder and is more protected before it emerges out of the alder. But in higher elevations, of course, we put in noble fir, true fir as well, and mix those in. So it's definitely, we've been working with our cooperatives and our researchers, so we're definitely trying to change that as well.
Thank you. A couple more. I know the average citizen who's not, say, a permanent resident or involved in the industry, there's a lot of confusion between the U.S. Forest Service and the state. Is that an issue for anybody that you're aware of, or how do you deal with that just from the state side? You just say they are there, and I'm assuming you have a good working relationship with the feds.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if there's a tree on the door, we're all the same folks as you look at a truck, right? And so we do have a good working relationship. We work mostly with the SIUSLA here, and working with their district ranger, and trying to, we meet quarterly and talk about what's the priorities for each of us and what are the challenges that we've had, but also, I think to the Forest Center, and if you've been to an education program at the Forest Center, one of the first things they say is like, here's the emblem for the Forest Service, here's ODF, here's what's different about that. But it's definitely, nobody understands boundaries if you're on private land, federal land, state land, any of those kind of pieces of it. And so we definitely work as closely as we can. We do have different missions, we do have different funding structures, so we try to explain that as well, but find partnerships where we can. Yeah.
And finally, thank you. One final question. The Elliott State Forest has become a bit of a political football, just from my visiting with other folks and reading the media and so on. Could you speak to that? Is I understood originally it was going to be kind of a scientific test forest managed by Oregon State University, and now that's changed. Could you speak to what's going on there, and how does that benefit Oregonians and all of us that are interested in the forest?
Right. So I'm going to be over my skis really quickly on the Elliott. So the Elliott State Forest is owned and managed by the Department of State Lands. Department of Forestry had an agreement and used to manage those lands, but that's been removed over the years. And then Oregon State was going to come in and manage those lands as part of a research forest, and has decided not to move forward with that. So I know the Department of State Lands they're coming up with different scenarios to move forward on the management of those lands. They continue to pursue a habitat conservation plan with the federal services, and still having the same, I haven't seen any large changes in that, the same conservation actions, the same management actions, and so the department, they are pursuing all those pieces of it. And as you know, the board for the Department of State Lands is the state treasurer, secretary of state, and the governor. And so I'll leave all those decisions and more details to them about which direction they'll be going. But that's the highlights that I'm aware of at this time.
Well, thank you. That's all good information. I appreciate your being here, and I understand maybe we'll have a tour out in the woods here one of these times when the sun comes out. I'd like that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time. Oh,
I see Director Lady's hands up. I don't know if you need to speak during Kate's presentation.
Hey, Chris, did you want to talk to Kate?
I think the biggest thing is money, revenue generated off the state forest goes to general fund, and money harvested off of the federal land goes to the public works department. They don't intertwine, and that is one of the biggest difference between the two programs.
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank
you.
you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, moving on in our agenda to item 6, we have consideration of a 6th amendment to Oregon Health Authority 2023 to 2025 Intergovernmental Agreement number 180028 for the financing of public health services. With us we have Marlene Putman, Director of Health and Human Services. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. So we're back at it with another amendment of the Oregon Health Authority for public health funding. This is a pretty small amendment. There's two changes pertaining to sections in the original agreement. Exhibit C of the original agreement is being replaced with an attachment to material, which is Exhibit A now. And it includes the amount of funds that the state of Oregon is adding to our full allocation for public health services. Specifically, $5,871.26 for emergency preparedness and response. And the second change relates to the requirement for a federal award information data sheet, which is now replaced by your Exhibit B, which says, in addition to the money we just granted with that 5,000 plus, brings our total allocation of funding to $76,643.26. And those are the two changes to the original agreement in this Amendment 6. It's been reviewed and approved through the county required contracting processes and is now before you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners?
Thank you, Marlene. I know that this is just the Sixth Amendment, an ongoing process. Can you speak just briefly to what our emergency preparedness and response is funding in the health department at this time? I think that during the pandemic, it was so clear that with COVID, there was so much happening. But what's happening now, and just, it doesn't have to be long, but just a paragraph or two, I think, as Doug said earlier, in a description.
Yes. So many people hear about Tillamook County Emergency Preparedness and think, oh yeah, we know who that is or what that is. But there's the County Emergency Preparedness, and then there's Public Health Emergency Preparedness and Response. So the reason why folks are seeing a lot of us during the pandemic is because it's a communicable disease, and public health is responsible for emergency response to that. So wow, is COVID over? Well, we're still seeing COVID, but as you indicate, Commissioner, our efforts are shifting more to what is now called public health modernization work. So how are we changing up emergency response? A lot of what we're doing right now is focused on communication. Are we getting the right information out to the right people in the right way? So people hear about surveys, focus groups, those kind of things. That's where that's coming from. The other thing that we're focused on is environmental hazards and how to respond to those. And what do those look like now? And what did they look like before? So our funding, in addition to environmental hazards, communication, we still do response to communicable diseases and our processes for preparing for emergencies, whether it's wildfires, etc. Our funds go to primarily paying for our contracted services with Ed Wilson, who's our emergency preparedness staff, and a little bit of our public health deputy. There's not a lot of funds coming from the state of Oregon, so that's pretty much what it covers. And the rest is supported by the staff within our department.
Perfect, thank you.
Have we answered any questions?
No, I appreciate it. I think that's just helpful for everybody to get that little snippet. And I just appreciate very much the work that's being done. I appreciate Ed, everybody who is listening to our radio calls on Tuesday morning on KTIL is hearing Ed. He tends to be the one who provides that report for us. So lots of good work happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, this seems pretty straightforward to me, Commissioner. I'm prepared to go ahead.
Likewise, as am I. Thank you, Marlene.
Okay, well, in consideration of a Sixth Amendment to Oregon Health Authority 2023-2025 Intergovernmental Agreement number 180028 for the financing of public health services, I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Okay, Marlene, you have the next one also. Item 7 is consideration of a memorandum of understanding with Tillamook Family Counseling Center for the mobile crisis response.
Yes, I'm hoping that you have already heard from the director at Tillamook Family Counseling Center about their mobile response, because the majority of this agreement details all the work they do and a very small part of what your Health and Human Services Department does. So this is a memorandum of understanding. It's not a contract. It just says what the roles of the parties are. And our role in this agreement is covered under page 2, section 3, that says, through this consultation and communication, we will work with Tillamook Family Counseling Center's team and determine the appropriate interventions, given like information we share about a patient need within the clinic or within any of our facilities. And we'll call them at the appropriate number at the appropriate time after that assessment, which could include some on-call consultation. And then we'll work to resolve the issue and talk about care coordination and how we work with their team to meet the needs of our specific clients or people who may be interacting with any of our staff in any of our programs. I am so appreciative of the work for this mobile crisis services that Tillamook Family Counseling Center provides. And as indicated, the bulk of the work falls on them. The purpose is really to reduce psychiatric hospitalizations for individuals who are experiencing a mental health crisis, and to reduce the number of individuals with a mental health diagnosis who are incarcerated. So trying to intervene early and prevent those things from happening, and hopefully to reduce the use of the emergency department as that triage or treatment space. Those are the way I understand the goals and appreciate their response when we may have someone, again, in our facilities or working with any of our programs to help resolve the issues. So this is an updated agreement for us between Tillamook Family Counseling Center and our department.
Thank you, Marlene. Comments?
Just to say, I'm excited to see the MOU. I know that you work very closely with Tillamook Family Counseling all the time, but having an MOU that just spells out what happens in a crisis situation is very helpful. We had one with them when I worked at CARE, because we would have individuals come into our office seeking services from our staff, just as they come to your office seeking services from your staff. And sometimes the crisis would, come to light. They would begin talking to staff, and what they would talk about would be things related to a mental health crisis. And our staff were not the right people at CARE to respond to that, just as sometimes your medical providers are not the right people to respond to that. But you don't want to just have that person walk out of the office in that crisis and then, to your point, end up engaged with law enforcement or end up at the emergency room because nobody else knows what to do. Where if we can bring in that mobile crisis team early on as the first signs of challenge exist, boy, we can really make a difference in people's lives and allow for different outcomes. So thank you for doing that. I absolutely appreciate Tillamook Family Counseling's work and appreciate the health department's commitment to really join in that process. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I am in full support of what this is asking for. I guess I would say I'm amazed and pleased from time to time about the depth of services and the types of services we have in a relatively small community of 27,000 people, and I know we have a metropolitan area 90 minutes away, but still we're able to do all these things, and this is a specialized service, and so I'm in full support. I would note that occasionally it goes the wrong direction, like now we're evidently losing our dialysis unit at our local hospital, and maybe there's a solution, don't know, but that we have these kinds of things just adds to the quality of life, and recognizing that anybody can avail himself or herself of these services, I think is a good thing. So good for all of us, good for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also grateful for the mobile crisis response work, and I've heard from a number of people in the field about how it works, that if someone shows up at the emergency room who doesn't actually require emergency services, but some other kind of service is needed, the mobile crisis response folks can respond there, and or if the police are called, but somebody isn't actually involved in a crime, but they're having a mental health crisis. So there are a lot of applications for this work, and it's really important work, and I agree completely that those folks don't necessarily belong in the emergency room or in jail. They need some other kind of help. So I'm grateful that we're addressing that.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a memorandum of understanding with Tillamook Family Counseling Center for mobile crisis response, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 8, consideration of an Oregon Department of Transportation Agreement number 73000-000-26415 for the Doherty Slough Blum Lane Bridge number 57C36 project. With us, we have Director Chris Lady, Public Works.
Good morning, Commissioners. So this particular bridge is it's a bridge in poor condition. We applied for a grant, if not so much a grant, but we applied through the programmatic request for funds through ODOT. In this particular instance, the bridge replacement is anticipated to be struggling here. It's anticipated to be $3.7 million. And give me just a minute. It's getting there. So the current bridge is a railroad car timber deck and a timber foundation. The bridge is in poor condition. It's currently low rated at 5 tons, which is not very much. The bridge accesses farming land and accesses private property. So when we look at that, we applied for a fund through programmatic to be a total cost of $3.7 million, of which ODOT would be responsible for $3.4 million, with the county picking up the remainder. The county component of that would be 10.27% match, and the state requirement would be the remaining. This is something that we've gone through the programmatic request, and based on formulas, not necessarily a grant, but based on formulas, we were awarded the funds to do this work. So as we go through this process, we recommend approval for this replacement of the Bloom Lane Bridge. Prince Bridge is what it's also called, local. It's all Bloom Lane, and requesting permission to do that. The construction of this would likely occur in 2028 or 2029.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioners, do we have comments, questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, could you describe a bit more for maybe all of us the precise location, or at least bring it down to the neighborhood? I'm not entirely sure where that one is. I know where Doherty Slough is, but whereabouts on that?
So if you're on Wilson River Loop in the east-west section, Wilson River Loop runs north-south and then it runs east-west. So east-west ties you with Fred Meyers and the Solly Smith boat launch. There is a road a little bit closer to Solly Smith, about halfway between. And you follow that road, Bloom Lane, that follows that road out to really the end of the road. And that ties you into private farmland and then private property. So this bridge will replace something that is existing in place. And that ties us into this. One of the things I want to kind of bring up a little bit is when you look at the revenue for the road department, is we do not receive any based on the gas tax, the state motor vehicle fund. And the state motor vehicle fund is really based on the gas tax and also the DMV fees, so your tags that go in your vehicle. So as we continue to see the rise in electric vehicles and in hybrids, the dollar amount received by the counties is proportional. It is not related to the percent. Did I lose everybody?
Nope, we can hear you.
All right, good. My screen kind of blacked out. We received a cents per dollar amount, which is not a percentage. So no matter where you buy your gas in the state, we receive a portion based on where your vehicle is registered. So it doesn't matter where you buy gas, it is where your vehicles are registered in the state. So your second homeowners really contribute nothing to this. The second largest component is based on transient lodging tax, which is currently 30 to 40% of the budget, somewhere in that range, depending on TLT revenue and based on the continual decrease in revenue based on your gas tax. Again, as more vehicles are more fuel efficient, they don't need to buy gas. If you're an electric vehicle, you buy no gas. So when you look at that, the dollar amount of TLT is significantly important to the road department.
We lost your audio. You froze there, Chris. Bill, did you have something?
I try to resist historical ramblings, but I remember where Bloom Road is, Commissioner, because it's probably been 15, 20 years ago, a state trooper and his family lived out at the end of Bloom Road, Mr. Bloom, and it was named something different before that, and then he met his early demise, and they came in, the county granted a name change and made it Bloom Road, so that's why I know where it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Chris, you froze, so maybe we'll just go ahead and vote on this. Did you have other questions or comments?
I didn't have questions. I was just going to comment to his point about the state motor vehicle fund and how we get our funding. We are challenged because it is where your car is registered. And I had the opportunity at the AOC meet and greet on Monday night to visit with Representative Pham, who is one of the chairs of the Transportation Committee at the state level, and just explain this to her, because one of the things that we expect to have happen in the 25 session is a full transportation package coming from ODOT, including some funding mechanisms working to address to what Chris was talking about, the lack of adequate gas tax in the light of more efficient vehicles. So as they work through that, I thought, well, if they're going to open that process and that funding formula, let's make sure that for those of us who are significant second home communities, of which we are not alone across the state, that there's an awareness of how that shortchanges our road departments. So,
thank you. Absolutely true. I agree because people, so many people are not registered. Their licenses are not registered here, although they have homes here and they drive here. And also we have so many visitors, as we all know, and those folks may or may not be paying gas tax here. So, so I think the funding system has sort of fallen apart over time, and I'm eager for the legislature to take a look at that and update it.
absolutely. I think it is time, and I think particularly because even the gas tax, it's not where you buy your gas, it's where you register your car. And I think people don't realize that. And I think the other piece is the realization that the second homeowners pay property taxes, which is great, and that helps with our general fund, which has a lot of services in it, but it does not do anything for the roads, because property taxes cannot be used for our roads. So it's one of the complications of county government funding that roads have to be a special revenue fund, and it has to come from that state and federal funding that comes there, as well as the transient lodging tax that the voters dedicated in 2014 when they passed that. So yeah, it's complicated. Thank you, Chris. It's good to see that you're back. I think we've just kind of kept talking.
No, I appreciate that. To summarize, $385,000 approximately, it would be our match for the replacement of the Prince Bridge. I'm not entirely sure where I dropped off the conversation. I had to restart. Do you have any questions for me?
I do have one, Chris. I know when you do something that's fast and needs immediate attention, you've used rail cars and those sorts of things. Would this be a stick-built bridge, so to speak, designed, engineered with trusses and all of that, or how would this be done for that amount of money?
So currently we have two bridges that are using railroad cars. The Big Trout Bridge, which has been dominating a lot of our discussions, is one of the two rail cars. The Prince Bridge is the second of the rail cars. This would be likely would be a concrete beam crossing over this. So that would remove the need for the rail cars. Oftentimes rail cars, they're literally what they sound like. They are cars that were used in the railroad environment and repurposed to serve as bridges. Obviously not the ideal situation. So this would be a concrete beam bridge.
Thank you.
All right,
We're ready for a motion.
okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of an Oregon Department of Transportation Agreement Number 73000-00026-415 for the Doherty Slough Blum Lane Bridge Number 57C36 project, I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Chris. Moving on to item 9, consideration of a resolution in the matter of proclaiming authorization of a loan from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Clean Water State Revolving Fund for the Pacific City Transfer Station. With us, I believe we have Justin Weiss, our interim program manager of the Solid Waste Department. Good morning, Justin.
Morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Excited to be here this morning as we're getting close to getting this loan process across the finish line here, which started, maybe roughly 2 years ago by my predecessor. So we've, about a year ago, we had the authorization from the board to submit the application. That was awarded about mid-2023. And we were going through the state environmental review process, and that wrapped up at the end here of 2023. And now we're ready to get moving on the loan agreement. So the resolution that's before you will approve the loan for the full amount. The actual loan that will be signed for Pacific City will allocate the design funds. So it's going to be about $83,000. That will be freed up by this agreement that we will sign, and that will be a digital loan agreement that will be shared with you commissioners after I share everything with DEQ, the resolution. There's also an Appendix G that was shared via Civic Clerk, and that is stating that we will not be doing any lobbying with the loan funds, and that was signed by Public Works Director Chris Laity. And then there's also a attorney letter that will be supplied by Mr. Bill Sargent, saying that he's reviewed and approves us to move forward with the loan signature. So those two documents, along with your resolution, will allow us to sign the final loan agreement, get those design funds going. That'll give us capital to get the design across the finish line. We're at the 90% phase for Pacific City, and so this will allow us to re-engage with the engineering firms, get those plans finalized, electricity. We're also doing a building down there, which will allow for recycling undercover, and also as we're looking at the RMA coming in 2025, we're going to be expanding the materials that we do take, and having a building will be crucial for baling, collecting more materials. I'm actually meeting with the representative from the Mattress Recycling Council this afternoon, who's going to visit all 3 of our transfer stations and hopefully roll out a program where we can more affordably and efficiently recycle mattresses throughout Tillamook County. So that's something to look forward to as well. So this infrastructure upgrade has been in the works for quite a while. I'm excited to get this near the finish line here. And again, I think with the design funds allocated here with the loan, within 2 to 3 months, I would come back before you commissioners, and there would be a 2-page amendment, is what DEQ told me, and this would just allow us to move forward with the construction loan. So that would free up the remaining loan amounts that are designated in the resolution. I believe Pacific City, I don't have it in front of me, but it's $700,000, I believe, roughly $800,000. So once we sign that amendment, that would allocate all the rest of the funds. So happy to answer any questions you do have on the Pacific City SRF loan.
Thank you, Justin. Because the next item is practically the same thing but for Manzanita, I wonder if we'll have to vote on them separately, but I wonder if you'd like to talk about that one now also.
Yeah, we could do that. Mr. Sargent did recommend we do 2 resolutions for the 2 agreements, and so they are quite duplicative. But Manzanita, very similar. We did finish construction in 2023 for a large majority of our infrastructure upgrade, and that was from existing funds, but we are going to be taking out a small loan. This one here for design funds is allocating $25,000. This will get us just across the finish line, and a couple final items for designing. The main component of Manzanita is the east wall is failing. We collect a lot of our scrap metal, starting to wash out, and so we will have funds available to reinforce that and make sure our infrastructure is secure there in Manzanita. So again, very similar process. The resolution, Appendix G, attorney's letter approving us to engage with this loan. This will release the design funds, $25,000, and then we will come back with a resolution in a few months when the engineering plans are completed, sign that, and that'll allocate the rest of the funds. And another exciting development, we talked a few weeks back about some grant funds that are going to be made available for the construction. We're waiting to hear back on officially whether Manzanita will qualify, but I'm hoping, based on the language, that we will get granted another OSG overflow stormwater grant in the amount of about $320,000. So that will be available for use for the retaining wall, and we will use the SRF funds as the matching funds for that. So we should hear back on that soon. We'll obviously come before the board to approve those funds. But yeah, today we have those two design loan agreements for the SRF State Revolving Fund Clean Water Loan Program. So happy to answer questions if you do have any, Commissioners.
Thank you, Justin. Commissioners?
Thank you. No, my only comment is that I think mentioned prior when this was discussed, all three, and the one particularly in Pacific City where I live, are rather heavily used. They become really an integral part of the community, and I think this is a good thing. And I'm glad to hear you mention something about mattresses, because I know some people, their recycling program consists of throwing it out of the back of a pickup and it ends up on the side of the road. So to the extent we can make sure that doesn't happen, I think it's a good thing. So let's get the money and make something happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is great. And as I remember, and I was just confirming, these are 50% forgivable loans, if not mistaken. So although we are borrowing it now and it gives us the money to do what we need to do as we go forward, assuming that all of the conditions are met, 50% of this is forgiven. So it's actually a pretty good deal from the state of Oregon. And I'm happy that your predecessor found them and that you've carried through in making sure that we're going to be able to use these funds and get the work done. So thank you.
Thank you, as am I. I think this is a great opportunity. And speaking of your predecessor, I see that he is listening in on the call. So
I did see that.
Dave McCall, if you can hear us, thank you for your work in setting this up. This is a great opportunity for the county to get upgrades to those facilities. And as Commissioner Scar mentioned, I'm grateful to you, Justin, for carrying the work forward.
Of course, my pleasure.
We're ready for a motion.
Okay, we will start with item number 9. In consideration of resolution R24-001 in the matter of proclaiming authorization of a loan from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund for Pacific City Transfer Station, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And item 10.
Madam Chair, in consideration of resolution R24-002 in the matter of proclaiming authorization of a loan from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund for Manzanita Transfer Station, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Justin, and thanks again, Dave McCall.
Thank you, Commissioners. Have a great day.
You too. Item 11 is consideration of the adoption of Local 223 Teamster Union salary schedule effective January 1st, 2024. With us, we have Tillamook County Treasurer Sean Blanchard. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you again is the Teamsters pay table that was agreed to in their collective bargaining agreement. Commissioner Olson had asked about the cook and the cook's assistants and why they were the same. I went back and looked at as far back as I could, which was 10 years, and they've always been the same. So I don't have any history as to why. It will be something that Director Wilson and I will bring up during Teamsters bargaining. I see that Sheriff Brown and Under Sheriff Kelly, maybe they have some back history as to why they're the same. They've always been, we do not have those positions filled at the moment, so that they are not directly affecting anyone.
Sheriff, would you like to speak to this, or Under Sheriff Kelly?
It's it's the cook, what were the positions again?
The cook and the cook's assistant, which we don't
So
have.
we do have a cook, we don't have a cook assistant.
We have the kitchen supervisor.
Oh, okay. My guess would be, and this is only a guess, that we used to have a full-time cook and then a part-time cook that would come in on the weekends. And so the part-time cook was probably an assistant because they were only part-time, maybe, and they did the same job. So that's probably why the pay is the same. But we only have a kitchen supervisor. We don't have. I didn't even know we've ever had cooks. So I don't really know the answer.
That was kind of my assumption too, is that it was either somebody coming in to fill in or training, and they were doing the same thing. I don't have a back history on it, and we looked through my office and could find nothing. And we keep a lot of paper down, actually. If there was something, Commissioner Olson, I would provide it to you, but that is my best guess, same as Sheriff Brown. And as I said, Director Wilson and I and the sheriff and under sheriff will address it during bargaining.
Well, thank you, Treasurer. No, the only reason it jumped out at me it appears to be two different jobs at the same salary, but I think the explanation that one is full-time, one's part-time, and maybe if there needs to be a name change or something, that can happen. It's a pretty minor item in the big picture, but it just kind of looked odd that you have a different title and two different, excuse me, for the same salary, but that explanation sounds perfectly reasonable, so we'll move on to other things and hope that the cook shows up and everyone gets fed.
It's interesting, and I think it's just a good reminder to everyone that we are a union environment, and while it seems simple that we would just remove one of them from the pay table, in fact, all of these things are discussions with our union to correct and amend. So, and we do have bargaining coming up with the Teamsters, so there's an opportunity to do that. So I look forward to what appears to be perhaps a little cleanup of the table with their approval.
Right, and probably with the pay equity review, that'll come up, because if these positions were filled right now and we genuinely had a cook and an assistant to the cook who were making the same, it would be a pay equity issue, but since the positions aren't filled, it's moot at the moment, so I appreciate that that'll be addressed in the future. Anything else? All right, I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of the adoption of Local 223 Teamster Union Salary Schedule effective January 1, 2024, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Item 12 is consideration of an American Rescue Plan Act subrecipient agreement with the City of Tillamook for the wastewater master plan update. Rachel Haggerty, Chief of Staff.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
This is the last of the community ARPA agreements. It's in the amount of $200,000 we're providing to the City of Tillamook to help support their wastewater master plan upgrades. So they're working on that and looking for money in different places, and we're able to give them $200,000.
Great.
For consideration.
Great. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
I just to say that infrastructure is such a crucial piece of any development, and I think what is being recognized across the state of Oregon, and Tillamook County is no different, is that our small cities who operate on very tiny budgets are really struggling to upgrade their infrastructure and keep pace. So this plan that the City of Tillamook is working on is the first very, very crucial step to being able to go after the federal funding that is coming relating to infrastructure, as well as state funding that was, some of which was allocated in the last session and more that should be allocated in this session, particularly targeting toward the housing crisis. So we're at a key moment in time where funding will be available hopefully at levels that we haven't seen for a very long time and may not see again at the federal level. So this plan is crucial.
I agree. I'm encouraged that this is moving forward. I remember vividly the ARPA discussions about this, and as Commissioner Scar alluded to, it's about housing because the City of Tillamook needs to upgrade their wastewater treatment going east in order for housing to be built on the east side of the city. And so it's, I think it's a great use of the funds because it addresses a very important issue, not only the infrastructure itself, but the ability to move forward and build new housing. So I think it's terrific. I'm really glad we're moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah, agreed. And economic development as well. Business is another factor that the land that really is available to be developed in the city of Tillamook is trending eastward at this point, and we need the service. Okay. So, Madam Chair, in consideration of an American Rescue Plan Act subrecipient agreement with the city of Tillamook for the wastewater master plan update, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Rachel. All right, commissioners, item 13 is board concern. Have you any?
No, not at this time, thank you. If we have a work session in the future, I have some items, but they would be better addressed in that forum rather than this.
Terrific, okay.
Just a reminder to all in the public, I will not be here on Wednesday next week. I will be traveling back from Washington, D.C. I am off to the National Association of Counties Conference along with Rachel Haggerty. It's actually over the weekend is where bulk of the work happens, is on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, Tuesday as well, and then flying home on Wednesday. So I trust you all will have a fabulous meeting on Wednesday.
We hope that you both have a fabulous day. Okay, so we will, I'll give our announcements now and then we're going to go into executive session. The commissioners will hold a board briefing today, Wednesday, February 7th, 2024 at 2 p.m. to discuss weekly commissioner updates. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. And at this time, we will recess the board meeting at 10:06 for an executive session under ORS
1926602E.
Thank you.